पृथिवी शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगं शान्तिर्द्यौः शान्तिर्दिशः शान्तिरवान्तर दिशा शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर्वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिश्चन्द्रमा शान्तिर्नक्षत्राणि शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिर्वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्गौः शान्तिरजा शान्तिरश्वः शान्तिः पुरुषः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिर्ब्राह्मणः शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः शान्तिर्मे astu shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu. Sarve santu niramayaha. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. Ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Sarvastaratu durgani. Sarvo bhadrani pashyatu. Sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu. Sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
Our song is on page 12 today.
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Takshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Our subject today is the reality non-show. I know that some of you have been speculating about what this title might indicate, and some of you have shared with me your thoughts of what I might say today. And I think whatever ideas you might have about today's topic, you probably know that ultimately it's going to come somewhere about what Vedanta has to say about these issues. But yes, let's begin with the reality shows, or the genre known as reality TV. It began in very dead earnest sometime in the 90s, about 25 years ago. And to at least some section of viewers, reality TV became very popular. And sometimes this question can come and has been asked: how real is the reality that is depicted in these programs? And by and large, while it's true that technically these shows are unscripted, now it's pretty well known that it's not as spontaneous as they are sometimes made out to be. That a lot of these situations in these reality shows are contrived, a lot of them are planned, and yet, well, they are popular. We know that there's a type of literature, there's movies, which are pure fantasies, and we enjoy them. But we also enjoy reality that is depicted in some other kinds of movies, in novels, in TV shows. A question that can be asked is, why are we willing? Why, first of all, why these are popular? And why is it that we are even willing to pay in order to see these movies which are so true to life, these novels, read novels which are so true to life, when it's freely available? You just look out of the window, true to life, life is already available to us. And maybe because even though life as it is, we have access to real life because we are living it every moment of our life, not every aspect of life is available to us. And sometimes these novels and movies and TV shows might depict some aspect of life to which we have no access, or which is not a part of our own direct experience. So in some ways, the kind of reality that these the literature or the media presents is a kind of vicariously experiencing those aspects of reality to which we have no direct access. And yet, the question is this: no matter how real or true to life a movie might be, or a television show might be, or a novel might be, it's somehow still a little bit less real than our day-to-day life. It never comes up we say, well, this is so true to life that it's not different from my own life. It's always a little bit less real than that. And no matter how good, again, a novel or a movie it might be, while it might bring some amount of fulfillment, it's never enough. There's always another novel to be read. There's always another movie to be seen. There's always another show to be seen. Similarly, even our own life, as it is now, a life which is more real than the life in movies, it also has some amount of fulfillment, some amount of enriching experience. And yet, even our own life doesn't seem to bring a lasting fulfillment. There's always a sense of wanting something more. There's always a sense of that we are lacking something. And so, speaking of reality, therefore, we can see that reality itself evokes very different responses, different kinds of responses. Now, some of these are very clear, and all of these probably are parts of our experience at some time or other. And first thing clearly is, well, reality is usually quite boring. There is a story that's often told, and many of you might have heard about it, that there was one Vedanta teacher and who was going for a morning walk along with a few of his students. And in one place, in an opened area, they found a big tent was pitched and lots of advertisements saying that a great mimic had arrived, and he could mimic the sound of a dog so well that people were buying tickets and going in huge numbers. And so when this teacher saw this big show that's a mimic show that's on, he thought this might be a good opportunity to teach something to his students. So he asked his students, okay, just on the opposite side of the road, put up another tent and make even greater advertisement that even a better mimic has come, who can make even more real, more true to life sound of a dog barking. And so these students obey, they put up. And then nowadays, it's a day of advertisement. The more the noise you make and the more the ads you have. And so suddenly people saw, oh, here's a better one, even more real. So all the crowd which used to go in one place, they all started going to the new show which had come. And so the first show, all the people had paid and got inside, and as they were seated, and the mimic turned out to be this Vedanta teacher himself. So he just came and then appeared before them. He was sitting on a chair, and he made such an amazing sound of a dog barking that everyone clapped, and they said, this is the real stuff. This is much better than the other one which we saw. And after all the appreciation and praise had been showered on him, then from under his chair, he took out a real little dog whom he was pinching. And it turned out, really, it was the sound of the dog barking that they had heard. And people were just mad. They said, we have paid for these tickets. We bought this ticket just to hear a dog bark. We are not good. They asked for the refund of their money. They said, well, this is no mimicry. It's a dog, just to hear a dog barking. And so, of course, they promptly returned all the money. And then the student wondered, like, what's the point of all of this? And then the teacher explained, and he said, I did all this to tell you this is the nature of the world. People are willing to pay money to hear a human being making a sound of a dog. And that they're willing to pay for it. But a dog making the sound of a dog is not satisfying. So how do we really want reality? Or do we want something that mimics reality? And that's a question that we can ask. A lot of our desire to seek reality in literature, in movies, may not be really a desire to seek reality at all, since the real is right away available to us every moment of our life. And yet we want to seek reality someplace else. So, and that one of the reasons obviously could be that our reality as we're experiencing it not always exciting. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is exciting, but most of the time it's pretty boring. In fact, one of the elderly Swamis used to tell us that one of the challenges in spiritual life is the challenge of monotony. In order for us to progress in our spiritual life, we should be able to conquer the challenge of monotony. Most of us try to do it by finding something new to do every day, finding something exciting. Go to a new place you have not been to before, make new friends, watch new programs, download new apps, play new games. So there's this craze for constantly something new, because anything new that comes in a very short time becomes old again and then becomes monotonous again. And then that effort to get over monotony never seems to succeed. We always want something new. And that is one big distraction for someone who takes spiritual life seriously. After all, your spiritual practice, you don't have a new practice every day. You repeat the same mantra the same visualizations, the same thing. And if we get bored by that, if it appears like a monotonous thing, just another chore to be completed, then we have missed the point. So how can we find, if we are able to conquer the monotony of daily life, then we will be able to see the new and exciting discoveries that a spiritual seeker makes through the daily practice of prayer and meditation. But if we are trying to find excitement in things other than these, then we have not really solved the problem of monotony. So that's one kind of a response. Oftentimes, reality appears to be boring, monotonous. A second response to reality is sometimes it's frightening. It is best to not think of at least some aspects of reality. And clearly, the times in which we live, images of war and death, sometimes even on magazines or on television program or news coverages, people kind of become somewhat desensitized to seeing bomb blasts and death and so on. But even then, if there are some really horrific pictures put on a cover of a magazine or shown, and people protest. They said, what was the need to show such terrible things? So we know they exist, but we don't really want to see it. We want to keep it away. Years ago, when I was editing a journal back in India, I was working on one of the editions of the journal, and I think it was probably on the issue on health, which is also now available as a book called Healthy Mind, Healthy Body. And one of the authors made a great point about even death. He said how when there is death, and in the times in which we live, in no time we have the funeral home come and whisk the body away. And then we really don't have to see it. We don't have to encounter it until after a few days when it's nicely decked out, very kind of, it's all beautified and everything. And then we come, we pay our respects, and then again it just vanishes from our sight. And he said this is the kind of an environment in which we have grown, where even though we know death exists, we know that it's not pretty, but we don't want to encounter it in its most gruesome reality. In fact, even the cremations, for instance, of course, burial, the body goes, you really don't see anything, it's underground. In cremations, if there's an electric furnace in which most of the cremations are done nowadays, that's also pretty clean and this thing, you don't see anything. But in many of the traditional forms of cremation, where there's a pile of wood, you keep the body, and then it's burnt. And I had occasions, and of course those of us who have grown up in India or maybe in some other places where it is done that way, are able to see. Again, it's not pretty. You just see a body right there, and if it's especially of someone whom you have known closely, again, it can be a very painful to watch. But that's the reality. But that's a reality that's not very pleasant. That's a reality from which we turn our eyes, we turn our face. We don't want to encounter it. So sometimes the reality can be frightening. Sometimes the reality can be something we don't want to see, even though we know it's there. And a third kind of a response is that reality is good when things look bright, and reality not so good when things don't look good. So a value of a reality then is judged by the effect it has on our minds. Which raises the question, is there anything in life which is really real, which can stand on its own? Or do we simply have to keep on inventing different realities to suit the different needs at different times? It's like, I'm in a mood to see a comedy. You go and watch a comedy show or read some comedy movie. Or sometimes people want to go and see some adventurous thing. So we have now these kind of alternative realities, and now there's a virtual reality. So there is a lot more options available for us. to see the kind of realities we want to see. And that's why we come back to that question. Is there anything really real which is not dependent on anything else? And it's now, this is when we come to Vedanta and then ask the question, what does Vedanta have to say about reality? Now, in the Vedanta texts, we find several useful insights about reality. And the most important insight is this, and that is reality is never temporary. That reality is always permanent. Now, why do we say dreams are not real? Why do dreams not represent reality? And clearly it's because they are temporary. So if something is real, it is always real. If something is unreal, it is always unreal. Now, only that which is real can be said to exist. If something is unreal, it cannot exist. So if we say dreams are unreal, we don't believe that a dream world exists somewhere, that there is such a thing as a dream world, and every night I go and just visit it and then come back again. And even though I'm awake, the dream world exists somewhere. So if something is unreal, it doesn't exist, it is only imagined. We can call it dream, we can call it a hallucination, you can call it whatever you want, but it's not something that's real. So there are then these two things. On one side, we have reality, existence, and permanence. Something is real, it exists, and it is permanent. And on the other side, there is things which are not real, they don't exist, and they are not permanent. Now, we can use these parameters to determine whether anything is real or unreal. So when we say a believer, someone who believes in God, so what does that mean? If someone believes in God, it means for that person, God exists, God is real, and God is permanent. In other words, God doesn't die. Only when these three conditions are fulfilled, we can say then that's really real. Now, at the other end of the spectrum are things, as I said, are unreal, they don't exist, and they are not permanent. And it's not so easy to come up with examples of things which don't exist and are not real. One example is, let's say, a square circle. A square circle doesn't exist. No one has ever seen it, past, present, and unlikely whether anyone will see it in the future as well. And so it's unreal. Now, in between these two extremes, the things which are real, exist, and permanent, unreal, don't exist, and impermanent, are things which seem to be real but don't exist. And they are temporary. So, real, existence, permanence, unreal, non-existence, impermanence. These are the two extremes. Now, in between these two, there are things which seem to exist, which seem to be real, but which are temporary. And one example I've already referred to is dreams. Dreams, we know them to be unreal only when we wake up. While we are dreaming, the dreams are real. They seem to be real. When we are dreaming, the dream world seems to exist. And yet, of course, and then of course it seems to be permanent when we are dreaming. When we wake up, we suddenly find, no, it wasn't there, really. Now, these things which have the one characteristics, the characteristic of reality, but they have another characteristics of the other side, which is impermanence. Now, Vedanta calls these things apparently real. The word for real in Sanskrit is sat. The word for unreal is asat. And all of those things which lie in the middle, they are called mithya. By mithya is meant apparently real. They appear to be real, but they are not really real. And therefore, Vedanta presents a worldview which has these three levels of existence. The topmost level is called absolutely real. It's always real. It's existence itself, it's reality itself, and it's eternal. And in Sanskrit, it's called Paramarthika Satta. And Brahman, God, or the Atman, the self, it belongs to that highest reality, absolute reality. The second level of reality is called relatively real. It's called in Sanskrit Vyavaharika Satta. That is, it seems to be real for a while until its unreality is shown. Example, a dream. Seems to be real for a while and it becomes unreal while waking up. In Sanskrit, this is called Vyavaharika Satta, or relatively real. A third kind of reality is called apparently real, which I said mithya. There's another name in Sanskrit, it's called Pratibhasika Satta. That means it seems to be real, but that reality vanishes. Now, you can see that the second and the third category, relatively real and apparently real, seem pretty much identical. Both of them seem to be real, but they vanish. The difference is this. The apparently real, okay, I hope I'm not getting too technical. Let me give an example like this. See, an example that's often referred to in Vedanta texts, a coiled rope in a semi-lit room, a room which has insufficient light. There is a rope which is coiled there. You go and you suddenly think it's a snake. Well, you're not really thinking it's a snake, you're actually seeing a snake there. You see a snake, you're terrified, you shout, you call for help, and then someone switches on the light, and then you see, oh, it is just a rope. I thought it was a snake. So now, what is the reality of the snake that you saw there? When you saw the snake, you didn't think, oh, this is a rope, but I'm imagining it to be a snake. If you're only imagining it, you wouldn't have cried for help. You wouldn't have been afraid. But when you saw, you actually saw the snake there. So the snake was real to you at that time. But that reality of the snake vanished with the knowledge that it is a rope. So that reality which vanishes with ordinary knowledge, like the knowledge of a rope, that is called apparently real. Similarly, dream. A dream appears to be real, but the dream vanishes when you see that this world is real, and then the dream world appears to be unreal. So the knowledge of the waking world makes the dream world disappear. The knowledge of the rope makes the rope snake disappear. So this kind of a reality, which vanishes through ordinary knowledge, is called apparently real. The relatively real, the world that we see, when will this reality vanish? Dreams vanish when we wake up. The reality of the dream disappears when we wake up. What about the reality of the world that we experience? Now, if this reality of the world that we experience, if it would never vanish, if it would always be, then we have to say this is absolutely real. But we know from our experience, even before we have become enlightened, that this reality of the world does vanish. It's a big subject. I'm not going to go into details, but all that I can say is this. This waking world disappears when we fall asleep. The waking world is not an object of our experience when we are fast asleep. How do we know that the world exists? This world exists when we are asleep? We really don't know from our own experience. We know it through inference. We can imagine and say, when we wake up the next morning, while I was asleep, I didn't experience the world, but there were other people who were awake. There are people in other parts of the world. It was still day there. So it might be night for me, but it was day for them, and they were seeing the world. And that's why the world continued to exist, even though I was not seeing it. But that's only inference. I was not experiencing it myself. Now, if we are willing to accept that the world continues to exist after I sleep, just because somebody else has experienced it, not me, then just to be consistent logically, I will have to admit that even my dreams continue to exist. Because when I'm seeing a dream and I wake up, I'm the one who is waking up, not every person in my dream. And so other people in my dream are continuing to experience the dream world, and therefore the dream world exists. But how is it we are willing to just summarily say the dreams don't exist because they have vanished for me? If that makes sense, that the dreams are unreal because I don't experience them, then it should be equally true that this world doesn't exist because I don't experiencing it at night. It's a big subject, as I said, but this is something to think about, that we are not very consistent in our way of thinking about the reality of dreams and the reality of the waking world. If you have more questions, we can discuss it outside in the sitting room. Swami Vivekananda once said that we don't move from error to truth. We are not traveling from error to truth. We are traveling from truth to truth, from lower truth to a higher truth, a truth that is lower to a truth that is higher. And by that he meant is this, that we have to accept levels of reality. We are already doing it. When we say that the waking world is more real than the dream world, we are already creating a hierarchy. We are saying, well, dreams have some kind of reality, but this world that we are seeing now is more real. When we are able to accept that something can be more real than something else, then we have got to ask the question, is there anything else more real than this world? Dreams can be dismissed when we become aware of this higher reality of the waking world. It should be then obvious that if at all in life we become aware of a reality which is even higher than this world, then from that standpoint, this world would appear to be a dream. In this context, one of the earliest meetings that Ramakrishna had with his disciple Vivekananda, whose name was Narendranath then, is very important, very significant. As we know, Vivekananda as a young man was burning with this desire for knowledge, to know what is real. People pray to God, people say God exists, but is it just a matter of belief, or is God real? So he was in effect questioning the reality of God. And we read in his life that he visited many of the great ones, the great spiritual leaders of his time in the city in which he grew up, meeting them and asking them, have you seen God? In fact, he went and even met with the father of the great poet, Rabindranath Tagore. His name was Devendranath. He was a leader of a very great reform movement called Brahmo Samaj. And so Narendranath goes to him, and he was known as one of the very great yogis of his time, a very advanced soul. So Narendranath goes and asks him, "Sir, have you seen God?" So this elderly gentleman, a great yogi, looked at Narendranath and said, "You have the eyes of a yogi." Well, that was not the answer to the question. That was not the question. The question was, "Have you seen God?" And the answer was, "Well, you have the eyes of a yogi." And then the young man was smart enough to understand what that answer meant. And so he could not find anyone who could say, "I have seen God," until he comes to this simple little priest in a Kali temple and then asks him that question, "Have you seen God?" And for the first time in his life, he found someone just saying it, "Yes, I have seen God." Interesting as that first sentence is, the second sentence is probably even more interesting. After telling Narendranath, "Yes, I have seen God," Ramakrishna said, "I see him more clearly than I am seeing you." I think that's very, very important. That comes back to what we were discussing. That yes, when we see, when we experience the world, yes, it is very clear. But when we experience God, that experience, is it same as, when I see God, is it same as seeing this, or is it something deeper? And what Ramakrishna said, it is more clear. In other words, God or the spiritual reality is much deeper, is much more clearer, is higher than the reality of this world. And that higher reality, as I said, is called the Paramarthika Satta, the absolutely real. So as we go about our life, we need to carry out all our duties and responsibilities, but all the while recognizing at least the possibility that there could be something more real than the world that we encounter. If we see ourselves as spiritual seekers, we have to accept the possibility, even though we may not have experienced that reality yet, but at least the possibility that there could be something more real than this, just as there is something less real than this. When Vivekananda said that we are moving from lower truth to higher truth, what does it mean? What does being truthful means? We are often told, be truthful. Now, truthfulness as a virtue is often limited to speaking truth. That you report things as they are, and that's being truthful. That's true. But that's only one aspect of truthfulness. All of these great qualities or virtues that are spoken about have to be practiced, not just verbally, but at different levels. As I've said before, even violence, we can say, on all honesty, most of us are non-violent people. We don't go about, well, although a lot of people do carry guns nowadays, but we generally don't go about shooting people. But that itself may not qualify to make us think that we are non-violent in every way. Well, we may not have been violent in a physical way. We can be violent in a mental way. And that's why jealousy, hatred, envy, these are considered a psychological violence. We are being violent through our thoughts. If we speak hurting someone, then we are being violent through speech. So just as the virtue of non-violence has to be practiced in thought, word, and in actions, similarly, the virtue of truthfulness has to be practiced in all of these three, in thought, words, and actions. Not just about speaking truthfully. Now, what does it mean to think truthfully? And that involves then never flinching from the question that everything that I see and experience, is it really true? Does it really exist? If I stop those questions, if I ignore those questions, then I'm not really being completely truthful. I'm not really being completely honest to myself. And this way of questioning, this way of looking deeply into everything, that practice is called the practice of viveka or discernment. Not accepting something at face value, always questioning. The more we begin to question, the more we begin to see deeply into things, our ideas about it may undergo change. And we've seen that. Something might look very, very beautiful from a distance, and then you go close, and then you find, well, there are things in it that were not very clear to me from a distance. And then you are able to see things, warts and all, as they say, when you go close and see those things. So the more we are able to devote our energy, our time to seeking the real, the better our investment of time and energy become. The more we are able to then set our priorities in life correctly. Our decision-making abilities improve. We are able to make right choices. And that's true. With any choices that you have to make, any decisions you have to take, the more closely you look at the issues involved, the better informed you are, the better the choice you will make. And so therefore, if we want to understand life, we must look at life very closely, very deeply. Now, that doesn't mean that if things are not ultimately real, they are not important. At present, our daily lives, we are working in and through things which may not be ultimately real, but they can still be useful because they help us reach the reality beyond. So we cannot say, oh, this world is unreal, I have nothing to do with the world. Well, for that matter, this body is unreal, this mind is unreal. But right now, if for me to say the body is unreal, the world is unreal, it's just so many words. Because I don't feel it to be unreal. I'm just saying it's unreal because I'm just reading about it in books and hearing about it in lectures. Or intellectually, it might seem to be like that. So it's not just about saying it, but it's looking deeply, recognizing that yes, the ultimate reality of this can be questioned, but it can be experienced only when something higher becomes available to us. So usefulness and reality are not contradictory. It is possible to be both useful and unreal. Now we might say, well, how can an unreal thing be useful? Think about it this way. When let's say I go to sleep and I'm dreaming and I find myself, say, in the middle of the Kalahari desert, and I'm very thirsty. And someone brings me a little water, and I find an oasis, there is a little bit water there, and I drink that water. Now, that water is not real, it's just a dream water. But it's a dream thirst as well. So the dream water, which is unreal, is able to quench my dream thirst, which is equally unreal. So I just give one example to show that things could be unreal, but they could still be useful. If someone brings you a dream water, don't say, oh, no, I'm not going to drink it because just a dream water. Actually, think about it this way. Only dream water can quench your dream thirst. Your waking water cannot quench your dream thirst. If I find myself in a Kalahari desert in my dream, there may be a glass filled with water next to my bed where I'm asleep. That water is completely useless. So in order for things to act and interact upon each other, they have to belong to the same level of reality. Only dream water can quench my dream thirst. Only a dream physician can cure my dream illness. I may be a physician myself, but I probably am not a physician in my dream, and I cannot do anything for my own illness. And so, taking care of our body and mind is very important, even though they may not be ultimately real. The reason is this: the ignorance that we have about our true nature, the ignorance that we have about what is real, that ignorance is not really real either. So only unreal things can help me remove the unreal ignorance. And that is why all the duties and responsibilities that we have in life, the body and mind through which we act and interact upon this world, even though they are different from the ultimate reality, they are all useful. They are all real. If we take good care of them, then they will lead us to the reality. In the case, just to conclude, in the case of the rope and snake example, for instance, the rope shows itself through the existence of the snake. Listen to this carefully. In that rope snake example, the rope is showing itself through the existence of the snake, but the rope is also hiding itself under the appearance of the snake. So I know something is there, and that is, something is there, that's real, that's knowledge, because the rope is there, but the rope is hiding under the appearance of the snake. Now when the snake appearance disappears, the reality of the rope is revealed. In the same way, reality, that ultimate reality, the absolute reality, the reality of God, shows itself through the reality of our own existence and the reality of the world. Everything that we experience in life exists. If it didn't exist, we wouldn't experience it. So all of our experience in life is of only those things that exist. And God is showing, I was about to say himself, but I would say himself or herself through that existence. But the reality also hides itself under the guise of impermanence, since everything around us seems perishable. So when that perishable appearance is removed, just like the snake appearance is removed, reality as it is will show itself to us. The Atman shows itself through our experience, I exist. None of us, we can question the existence of God, we can question the existence of the world. None of us can question our own existence. Nobody in their senses, in their right senses, has ever said, I don't know whether I exist or not. It's just not possible. It's logical fallacy to question your own existence. But even though I know I exist, and the Atman is that existence itself, the Atman also is hidden under the veil of impermanence, because I feel I'm mortal. I feel I'll die one day. Now that is the veil of ignorance. Now once that veil, also called with Maya, when that veil is lifted, then I know that I not only exist, but I'm immortal, I am free, I'm eternal, I am deathless. So according to Vedanta, reality is always available to us. And this is not a reality that is dependent on anything. It's an absolute reality. Truth as it is, reality as it is, it's available to us right now, except that it is covered with a veil. And we need to lift that veil and see the really real. There is this one verse that comes in the Upanishad. Esha sarveshu bhuteshu gudho atma na prakashate drishyate tu agreya buddhya sukshmaya sukshmadarshibhihi. Means this deep truth of the self, the spirit, is present in the hearts of all. Sarveshu Bhute. It's present within us. Na prakashate. But unfortunately, it's hidden. It hides itself. But it can be seen. Drishyate. It's not that only a few special people will see it and the rest of us have to simply believe in it. That's never the Vedantic approach. Vedanta says if someone has seen it, I must also be able to see it. Only then it's really real. Every experiment must be repeatable. Every experience, if someone has experimented something and come to some results, that would be true only if that experiment can be done by someone else at some other place and come to the same conclusion. And so what the Upanishad says is drishyate, yes, every one of us can see it. How do we see it? Agreya buddhya, when this capacity to think becomes sukshma. Sukshma means subtle. Only when our mind becomes one-pointed and able to grasp subtle, finer aspects of reality, this truth is revealed to us. The ignorance is removed and the truth is revealed to us. And the best way to fine-tune our ways to think is to refine our thoughts, our words, and our actions. And the way to do it is to carry out all our duties and responsibilities at various stages in life. Our duties will change, our responsibilities will change. But at whatever stage of life we are in, we must carry out our duties and responsibilities as best we can, always remaining students of life, always seeking the truth, always seeking the reality. Only then will we be able to transcend these smaller, minor, ever-changing realities and go to that one reality. And being established in that one ultimate reality, everything else will appear as only a shadow. Then we reach or we experience fulfillment which will never end. At that time, there will be no monotony. So if you want to get over monotony, realize you are the Atman. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Bow down to Ramakrishna and Sharada. Next Sunday, we'll have Antar Yoga, as usual, a special program with prayer, music, meditation, reflection, and spiritual readings by members. And also, after that, we have a birthday celebration of everyone born in the month of December. So if you are born in December or any member of your family or friends, bring them along. We'll have a big celebration next Sunday. So that will be on the 20th. This Wednesday, we will meet to study the Gita at 7:30, so chapter 12. And on Tuesday and Saturday, our Arati and meditation will also continue as usual. So that's the program for the upcoming week. We'll conclude with a prayer now, on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.